This is Michael Popok for the new Legal AF YouTube channel. I'm curating it in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network. Take a moment and free subscribe and help us build our pro-democracy community. Let's turn to Donald Trump trying to score cheap political points on the campaign trail over the bodies of dead Americans who died in the path of Hurricane Helene. He's lying about the federal government response to support these people. The survivors, the people that are still caught without power, having lost their homes, loved ones, belongings, cherished memories. He's telling the American people that the federal government in the hands of Joe Biden doesn't care about them, isn't responding to them. If you're up in a tree right now or on top of your roof in one of these states in the South that has been devastated, coincidentally, battleground states. That's why Donald Trump is touring them as a private citizen along with the Graham family charity to try to provide some sort of additional support. But in doing so, he's lying about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, again, to score cheap political points. He said point blank that the Biden administration was asleep at the switch, was literally asleep. It wasn't taking, for instance, Governor Kemp's phone call in Georgia or the governor of North Carolina's phone call. By the way, side note, if this hurricane hadn't cut through battleground states and was somewhere else, I don't think you'd see Donald Trump. In order to coordinate the FEMA response, Kamala Harris stopped campaigning on Monday completely and focused on her role as supporting the Biden-Harris administration response. Donald Trump, let me say this straight. Remember his response when Puerto Rico, part of the United States, was devastated in their hurricane? He decided instead at that moment to have a Twitter attack on the mayor of Puerto Rico, calling her nasty. Does this sound familiar? A woman, a female mayor of Puerto Rico, attacked by a woman in leadership position, attacked by Donald Trump as being nasty. It's the only word he knows.
The world has seen, and the majority of the American people have seen how neglectful he was towards the people of Puerto Rico. If he calls a success or an unsung success 3,000 people dying on his watch, definitely he doesn't know what success is. You know, President Trump does not get it. He will never get it.
The reporter that asked him a question he doesn't like, who happens to be black as well, nasty. Hillary Clinton, nasty. Kamala Harris, nasty. Lord knows that N-word that he continues to use, I bet you he uses it around the house. I bet you Melania has heard that word one or two times in some fights with Donald Trump. All right. So Mr. Generosity, Mr. Government support. Remember what he did in Puerto Rico in response to the devastation there. Let's run the clip of Donald Trump tossing paper towels into the crowd in Puerto Rico. And when he wasn't doing that, just to lay the foundation here, to have as a backdrop for the rest of my analysis and reporting here about Hurricane Helene. Remember that when he sat there with the nasty woman Puerto Rican mayor that he'd been attacking before he even got to the island, and he sat in this sort of a conference table room talking about the devastation in Puerto Rico, he decided to undersell it, tell the Puerto Ricans that they weren't hit that hard when compared to, let's say, something like Hurricane Katrina. That's just what natural disaster victims want to hear, that their personal suffering in compared to somebody else's is not great enough. And even Donald Trump said that the first thing out of his mouth, you'll hear it next, was him saying to the Puerto Ricans who were hit by the hurricane, "You blew our budget in the United States." That's how we see you in Puerto Rico. You're just budget suckers, and we don't care about the loss of life and property and everything else. And then he caught himself, you'll see it, and he tries to double back, but he actually digs a deeper hole. Let's run now the clip of Donald Trump explaining why the Puerto Ricans are at fault because they blew the budget because they had a hurricane hit their island.
I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget a little out of whack. because we've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. We've saved a lot of lives. If you look at every death is a horror. But if you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died, and you look at what happened here with really a storm that was just totally overpowering. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. Now, what is your death count as of this moment? 17?
16 certified.
16 people certified. 16 people versus in the thousands. You can be very proud of all of your people, all of our people working together. 16 versus literally thousands of people.
All right, so this is the guy who's now on the campaign trail and attacking Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and claiming that their response to Georgia, North Carolina, and the other states that were hard hit is insufficient, or that it was sleepy Joe Biden who wasn't properly being responsive to Governor Kemp. Governor Kemp, who is a Republican, said that's a lie. Let's play first Donald Trump lying, bold-faced lying to the American people in order to score cheap political points. Let's roll that.
Mr. President, what do you think of Governor Kemp's response to the storm? Mr. President, what do you think of Governor Kemp's response to the storm here in Georgia?
The governor's doing a very good job. He's having a hard time getting the president on the phone. I guess they're not being responsive. The federal government is not being responsive, but they're having a very hard time getting the president on the phone. He won't get on, and of course the vice president, she's out someplace campaigning, looking for money. So they have to be focused over here. It's too big. This is a really bad one. And the governor's doing a good job, but he's having a hard time getting the president on the phone. They're being very non-responsive.
Now, how do I know that Donald Trump is lying? Because Governor Kemp said so. Governor Kemp responded, and he said the exact opposite. He said that the response by the federal government, led by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, has been seamless. They've gotten everything that they've needed. Whenever they've asked for, they've needed it. They've gotten it. Let's roll Governor Kemp basically rebuking Donald Trump. Let's go.
I just spoke. The president just called me yesterday afternoon. I missed him and called him right back. And he just said, hey, what do you need? And I told him, we got what we need. We'll work through the federal process. He offered that if there's other things we need, just to call him directly, which I appreciate that. But we've had FEMA embedded with us since, a day or two before the storm hit in our state operations center in Atlanta. We got a great relationship with them. We've been in touch with our congressional delegation, with Speaker Burns, the legislative delegation. And so, thankfully we have an experienced team that's used to this. And just like the expedited disaster relief that we're requesting, they have acknowledged receipt of that, and I'm sure that they'll take care of that very quickly.
All right. And now, what I like about all this is that it is an opportunity for a stark contrast to be laid out to the American people in October as they make their final decision about voting, about what kind of administration they want, what kind of United States of America do they want? Do they want the one that rallies around the fallen, their fellow American citizen, puts their arm around them, comforts them, and sends, without regard to budget, sends all the money and relief necessary, the gasoline, the generators, the food, the water, the clothing? This is school year going on right now. Is that what we want? Or do we want somebody who's throwing paper towels into the crowd, giving out $100 bills or one $100 bill to somebody in a food line? All political, performative art and theater to distract from the fact that he lacks leadership. Which one? Make the choice. While Donald Trump is lying to the American people and undermining yet another institution for which we should have confidence, which is FEMA, the Emergency Management Response Team, and all the money that flows to them to handle these responses. Kamala Harris is looking the American people straight in the eye, having come back onto the campaign trail and told them what the administration is doing right now. Let's roll Kamala Harris.
I have received regular briefings on the impact of Hurricane Helene, including from Administrator Criswell, and over the past 24 hours I have spoken with Governor Kemp of Georgia, Governor Cooper of North Carolina, and many local officials. I have shared with them that we will do everything in our power to help communities respond and recover, and I've shared with them that I plan to be on the ground as soon as possible, but as soon as possible without disrupting any emergency response operations, because that must be the highest priority in the first order of business. The devastation from Hurricane Helene is immense. Millions of Americans are without power. Thousands of families have lost their homes. Entire neighborhoods have been destroyed. Major roads have been blocked or damaged, leaving entire towns inaccessible at this very moment. Already, nearly 100 people have been confirmed dead, and hundreds more are missing. The destruction we have seen in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia is heartbreaking. In coordination with state and local officials, President Biden and I will continue to make sure that communities have the support and the resources that they need, not only to respond to this storm and its immediate aftermath, but also the resources they will need to recover. So far, more than 3,300 federal personnel are on the ground to assist with recovery efforts. They are deploying food, water, and generators. And we continue to work with teams on the ground to restore water and power as quickly as possible. To everyone who has been impacted by this storm, and to all of those of you who are rightly feeling overwhelmed by the destruction and the loss, our nation is with you. And President Biden and I, and all of the folks behind me, are with you. We will continue to do everything we can to help you recover and to help you rebuild, no matter how long it takes.
And I think this is important as we lead into the debate and get beyond the debate, for this stark contrast, this split screen to be presented. And I like the fact that Joe Biden, in his waning days, I mean, he's got from now until 11:59 on the 20th of January to be the president of the United States, and he's trying to get things done along with Kamala Harris for the American people. To people that say, well, why hasn't Kamala Harris given a press conference? She's just a little bit busy right now. She's got 2 full-time jobs. She is the vice president of the United States and has responsibilities that have been given to her and delegated to her by the president of the United States, and pulls together in times of crises. But you're seeing what the 2 commanders-in-chief would look like side by side. If Donald Trump ever got anywhere near the White House, I guess it would be, unless it's a battleground state, it would be criticizing and critiquing, especially if it's a woman governor, God forbid in his world, a natural disaster and the government response to it. To try to take credit for it, it always has to be me about me in Donald Trump's world. And throwing those paper towels and all that and saying, oh, you're blowing our budget. Whereas you got Kamala Harris, who looked the American people straight in the eye in the clip that we just saw and said, we got your back. This is where Americans pull together. This is where Americans are Americans and patriots. We pull together in time of war. We pull together in times of peace and natural disaster. We shouldn't be at each other's throats. It's not red versus blue. It's red, white, and blue. And that's the message of hope and joy and an aspirational message as Kamala Harris campaigns in poetry in order to govern in prose. And Joe Biden's had enough, too, of the lying. I'm going to run a clip now of Joe Biden after knowing in the fiber of his being that he picked up the phone numerous times and coordinated with the governors of North Carolina and Georgia and other places, especially Governor Kemp. He takes a question at the end of his official bully pulpit White House way to comfort the people of North Carolina and Georgia and other places. And then he's asked a question at the end that gets up his, I think he would say, gets his Irish up. And here we go. Let's roll that clip.
Donald Trump has accused both of you of ignoring the disaster.
He is lying. Let me get this straight. He's lying. And the governor told him he was lying. The governor told me he was lying. I've spoken to the governor, spending time with him, and he told me he's lying. I don't know why he does this. And the reason I get so angry about it, I don't care about what he says about me, but I care what he communicates to the people that are in need. He implies that we're not doing everything possible. We are. And you spoke to the governor, I assume you heard the Republican governor of Georgia talk about that he was on the phone with me more than once. So that's simply not true, and it's irresponsible.
And so I wanted to use, against the backdrop of this natural disaster and some human American suffering, to show you in this crucible, under this pressure, the judgment, the character of the two people competing for the office of the presidency, and demonstrate what should be obvious to most people. And to that last stubborn 5% that are still waiting, who waited for the last minute to buy their Christmas presents, are waiting for the last minute to make their decision about this election, you need to break hard for Kamala Harris. And I don't mean break hard like pump the brakes. I mean, you got to cut to her, right? You got to vote for her, because we can't go through another presidency of the Grim Reaper, Donald Trump. I just can't. And this country is better than that. It's bigger than that. I have more confidence in the country's ability to see through the charlatan, the P.T. Barnum, the mean-spiritedness, the dictator wannabe in Donald Trump, and vote for better. And understand and feel that when you have somebody like Kamala Harris who's going to be your president, she's going to be your president. And she's going to do her level best every day, from when she gets up in the morning and brushes her teeth till her head hits the pillow. She's going to be a hard-working, high motor, good character, good judgment, good executive function, surrounded by other people, some of which coming out of the Biden administration who've done a remarkable job, especially in the State Department and in defense, and bring them in with new people and new voices, right? Bring in all of these people, this kitchen cabinet around her to guide her, to help her, to implement, to pull the levers of power in our government. I mean, it is remarkable how there's always a moment. I don't know, this is the October surprise. There'll be a lot of things happening in October against Donald Trump. But there's always a moment that presents itself when leadership is on display, right? When profiles in courage are on display. And Hurricane Helene has provided that as we look at it against the backdrop of a presidential campaign. I'm going to continue to follow it all at the intersection of law and politics. I'm going to curate it for you right here on Legal AF MTN. As I said at the top, this is a new channel, pro-democracy, in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network. It's going to be me and a lot of other people from the Midas universe coming over to be commentators here as well, and some new voices, and a new show once a week. We're calling it Unprecedented, where we cover and follow everything, the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the ethics and non-ethics, and unethical behavior of the United States Supreme Court. Unprecedented. You can only find it on Midas Touch and Legal AF MTN. So until my next video, my next hot take, my next podcast, this is Michael Popok, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.